Almost no one from my childhood lives in this town anymore. Trust me, I don't want to be here, but I think it's the only way. The world needs to know he exists. It all started about 6 years back. A young girl went missing, last seen walking from the local high school. Before that, everything was different. God, the people around here wouldn't even lock their doors at night. It really was an ideal country town. Back then, a jewel hidden just beyond the border of the city. But that all changed. If you're from around here, you know the story, or at least some version of it. He's basically an urban legend now, but I know the truth. Teenagers from the next town over tell his story on Halloween or over campfires like he's some kind of myth. The story starts with a teenage girl gone missing, then another. Pretty soon our whole rural town is abuzz with accusations, rumors, and helpless, hysterical parents. But no one gets caught. The story goes that a father of one of the girls had enough. The police were too disorganized or too stupid to catch the kidnapper, so he took matters into his own hands. Over the course of a week, he retraced his daughter's steps across town dozens of times. He hired a small army of private investigators and finally figured out where the kidnapper had taken her. Rather than alert the cops with the overwhelming evidence he had, the father tracked the guy down himself, and to his horror, he found out that it was a local priest. When the dad arrived, he discovered the awful facts. His daughter and several other young girls were viciously raped and mutilated beyond recognition. Gashes and wounds covered almost every area of their flesh, each with a long cut from behind the ear, all the way down to their throats. All three girls were dead. In an act of primal rage, the father beat the priest half to death, but it wasn't over. That would have been too good for him. The father, a well-known butcher, would often carve up wild game for local hunters with those same hands. He tied up the sick son of a bitch and he skinned him alive. He filleted the priest with the same knives used on his daughter, and then he left him. What he didn't know, however, was that despite the shrieking screams of agony and the ungodly amount of blood loss, the priest was still alive. Somehow, it's beyond comprehension, but somehow he got off that table he was tied to and he slipped away into the shadows. Days later, the father confessed to local authorities about what he'd done, and that's when they realized the body was gone. Too bad that wasn't enough to keep his wife from leaving him. She believed him wholeheartedly and couldn't bring herself to live with someone as gruesome as the psychopath who'd murdered their daughter. A few days before she left town, another body was found. Her husband, hanging in a tree in the local park, with the skin of his face peeled off by what appeared to be a razor blade, both of his eyes gouged out. Another investigation and no arrest. The trial had gone cold. It seemed like whoever hung him there left no fingerprints, no footprints even, and no trace that another person had done this, like it was done by some kind of spirit. In the end, the head detective on the case explained that the father must have done it to himself. For a man grieving over the loss of his child, a bit of insanity made sense, especially considering his erratic behavior and leading the cops to an empty warehouse full of animal blood. Just after the funeral, 2 more local girls went missing. Then, a few more, each of them slowly reappearing, each with their faces sliced off, the flesh of their bodies torn up, all found hanging from trees in the woods. The police couldn't make sense of it. By the time the feds got involved, about half the families in town moved out. At some point, all the death, horror, and gore suddenly stopped. No more murders, no more ghastly tales of skinned bodies hanging from trees, no chase for a serial killer wanted for horrific slayings That was it. It was as if someone had flipped a switch. Eventually, the out-of-town real estate developers took the many abandoned homes as an opportunity to redevelop. And thanks to that, the area quickly became pretty popular with college kids from the city. People say it's safe now, but others are certain the Skinless man is still out there, watching, searching for his next victim. That's usually where the story ends, and someone around the campfire screams a bloody, curdling cry to scare the pants off other partygoers. Those stupid fucks. They don't know how real this is. They don't understand that they're all in danger. I'm going to prove it. I need to prove it before he comes back.